Well, the time is finally upon us. This is my top 20 death metal albums of 2024. Now, I know I said I was going to have this video out later than the time frame that I said. However, I found time to record and edit this, and I realized that the week that I wanted to release this and record it was Christmas week, and my family's home on break, and it just was going to be impossible, so I prioritized it to get it up now and do it now. So, a little bit of housekeeping here before I get started on this list. I say this every year, this is my list. It's not your list. There's going to be things on here that I missed, or that you liked more than I did, or that you would have liked to have seen. So keep in mind, this is just my top 20. Last year I did top 50. I'm still going to show off 50 of my favorite death metal albums this year. There's going to be another video following up of just what I would like to call like the honorable mentions video. These are the other albums that I really enjoyed this year. I'm not going to rank them, but I'm going to call them out because they deserve the praise and they deserve people to know that I enjoy them as much as I did. So that is coming. So technically I do have a top 50. However, this is my top 20. This is what I decided to do on this year. So again, like I said, it's my list. There's going to be something here that you may not know or that you wish you had seen on here. I really was picky this year. I told myself my top 20 was going to be the albums that I listened to the most, and these are truly the albums I listened to the most. Keep in mind, I've also gotten promos out, so some of these have come out fairly recently. However, I had promos previous to that and plenty of time to listen to and enjoy these before making this video. So there are a few on here, like maybe one or two that just came out within the last like month or two. So just wanted to call that out. So this year has been simply phenomenal for death metal. One of the best years in recent years that I can think of. I thought 2019 was a phenomenal year. This definitely surpassed that. There was a lot of albums this year that I absolutely loved and listened to a lot. But like I said, these are truly the ones that I found myself to be captivated the most with, listened the most with, praised a lot, talked a lot, shared with people, just was really fully in love with this year. And I tried to keep it to that. But like I said, there's going to be another video of all the other things that I love to listen to. So keep in mind that's coming. Also, one more thing, I'm going to do something a little bit different this year. Last year, I also did my top 20 black metal. I'm whittled that down to top 10, so that video will also be coming. And then I'm also doing another video that takes on the other genre of metal, like heavy metal, power metal, thrash, and goth rock metal, goth metal. So, yeah, I decided to separate out those albums and try to keep this strictly just to death metal because, after all, this is Melanie Loves Death Metal, and this is what you're here to watch. So, let's go ahead and get started. At my number 20 is one that I have barely talked about, if at all, on here, and that is simply because I hadn't got the physical release in until a couple of days ago, but I have been listening to this a ton since it came out, and that is Stench with their very first full-length album, Purulence Gushing from the Coffin. This is on Meisako un Ojo, and a nice, lovely pink cover there. This is their first full-length album. The band is out of Mexico. I should say the one-man band. I believe this is a one-man project. And simply just the most putrid, disgusting, filthy-sounding death metal I think released this year. It is very much in the vein of Cerebral Rot, if you're familiar with that band. Rest in peace to them. Just very stanky, filthy, swampy death metal. The first time I heard this, I was hooked immediately. This came out on November 19th. So like I said, it's a fairly newer release, but got the promo several weeks before the official release date. This is filthy and disgusting. It is crushing, and it has awesome guitar riffs that get stuck in my head for days. It has got a very claustrophobic, cavernous feel, very knuckle-dragging feel at times, but again, awesome guitar riffs and just very murky, swampy, and putrid style of vocals. This death metal I absolutely love. I fell in love with this album. I am so hooked, and I really could not put this in my top 20. It had to go there. So once again, Stenched, awesome stuff. At number 19, we have an album that came out relatively earlier in the year, one that has stuck with me since it came out, one of my favorite ones ever since it came out. I actually did a review for this on Heavy Metallurgy, and that is Trey Bylis. I always say your name wrong, even though you guys told me how to say it. And this came out on April 19th, 2024, obviously. This is Homicide. Now, $20 spin. This is one of the first $20 spin releases that you're going to see on this year-end list. We all know they had a phenomenal year. They put out so many quality releases. So yeah, that's going to be called out immediately. This is their second full-length album. This is a technical death metal band out of Canada, and I would say technical in the vein of not noodle soup. It doesn't shred your brain like that. It is done very in a very digestible way. I absolutely love this album. I was hooked on it the moment I heard it. There are so many elements to here, a lot of atmospheric and even dissonant moments at times, awesome guitar riffs, very cool style of, like I said, atmosphere they added to this. I love this album. So this one has stuck with me since it came out back in April. Was a massive fan immediately, and I just simply love this band. I cannot wait to hear what more they have coming in their discography. Definitely worth checking this out, especially if you're a fan of the technical death metal style with a little bit more of that atmospheric element added to it, that spacey atmospheric element added to it. Definitely check this album out. At number 18, again, another one that came out fairly recently. However, I had the promo for a long time before that. The first album on here that is more of the melodic death doom sound. Mother of Graves, the Pariah of Absence. I probably butchered that. I'm sorry. This is their second full-length album out on Profound Lore Records. Phenomenal album. I am very much a lover of that melodic death doom sound. This is a very sorrowful and sad album. There really is not much of a bright sound to it whatsoever. Very much in the vein of that Paradise Lost, My Dying Bride style of death doom. Done really, really well. They wear their influences heavily on their sleeves with this album, but it is phenomenal. One that I have not stopped listening to since I got the early promo for it and since I got the physical release. I am such a huge fan of this band. I love the work that they've put out so far, and I'm excited to see where they go after this. So Mother of Graves, did I already say they're from Indiana? They're a U.S. Indiana band. Phenomenal stuff. So if you like that melodic death doom sound, this is right up your alley. I highly suggest you checking out this album. All right, now we have our number 17, and this album is probably going to be one of the more ones that people don't really know much about. It might be one of the more underground albums on here. However, I've been a fan of this band ever since their first demo that came out back in 2016, and this is Intolerance with Waking Nightmares of an Endless Void on Gods of War Productions. Now, Intolerance is a band out of Spain. This is their second full-length album, and this is your straightforward death metal. They're not reinventing the wheel here, but it is done very, very well. Production is phenomenal. Guitar riffs are awesome. It's haunting. It's captivating. It puts you on a really awesome journey. It's very dark sounding. At times can feel a little bit spacey. I mean, look at that artwork. Just absolutely love this album. Have been spinning it for days and days. It's been in my regular rotation. There is a moment on here that just is so... It just has amazing vocals on here. There's just so many moments of where the vocals really, truly stand out. And again, it's got really that spacey element to it that I really, really enjoy. But like I said, it's more of a straightforward death metal album. It doesn't have any of those prog elements or anything like that. A lot of times when you say space, people assume you mean prog. That is simply not the case for this. Not reinventing the wheel, but it's just done really, really well. And one of the better underground death metal bands in the scene right now. Definitely needs more praise. So again, this is Intolerance. Awesome, awesome stuff. At number 16, this is kind of a wild card. People that have been watching this channel that know me well maybe wouldn't expect to see this on this list. And let me just caveat by saying I didn't expect it either, but the first time I ever heard this, I knew right away that I was going to be absolutely hooked on this album, and that is simply what has happened for this. And what I'm talking about is Viscera Infest with Teratoma. Yeah, that's right, you guys. I've got some brutal death metal gore grind on here. This is definitely right up that gore grind vein, as you can see right there on that album cover. This is their third full-length album. This is a band out of Japan, and man, are these guys nuts. This is so fast, so brutal. The drummer has octopus arms. And they're so fun, so fun. I've been simply hooked on this ever since I got this. This is the Headsplit Records tape release. It's also put out on vinyl on Huang Quan, I think Records or Productions or something like that. Just awesome. This came out back in August. And again, the gore grind sound here for me is very hit or miss. I tend to not always love everything in that music genre. This one definitely has more of the brutal death metal sound to it, more of that grindcore sound, but there's definitely those gore grind elements to it. Just a very fun and awesome album. So Viscera Infest, Teratoma, check this out if you're looking for just utter chaos that rips your head off and just is super heavy and disgusting with the gore grind to it. At number 15, oh man, this was tough. I had a really hard time placing this album because it is so good. But it went here. I mean, again, if I follow up in a year from now, this actually might end up being higher. And that is Engulfed with Unearthly Litanies of Despair. Another Masaku Unoho release. Also, Dark Descent Records put out the CD for this. The band is out of Turkey, and this is their second full-length album. Man, this is some very dark, heavy, crushing death metal. It has quite a bit of black metal elements, sounds to it. Got a blackened feel to it at times. So good. The guitar riffs, the vocals, everything on this are simply phenomenal. This is one of the best underground death metal bands in the scene right now. And if you're familiar with Hyperdontia, yes, this is Mustafa's other band, Engulfed, who just is an incredible guitarist, and I love his riffs on here. Just simply excellent death metal album. This came out relatively earlier on in the year. Forgot the release date now. Let me pull this up really quick. April 19th, and just so good. I absolutely just like the opening track on here immediately sucked me in. The B-side of this album, the final track on this album, which is a 7-minute long just journey, is so good. This album is simply phenomenal. So Engulfed, check this out if you have never heard them. At number 14, needs absolutely no introduction. This has been a band that has been in the scene for a very long time now. The New York brutal death metal legends, Malignancy with Discontinued. Now, this album, I did not give enough praise when it first came out, and I definitely should have, because when it first came out, I was listening to this nonstop, and it was definitely very frequent in my rotation. This is their 5th full-length album. Their first several albums are some of my favorite brutal death metal albums to come out. This has got a very technical style to it, so I guess you could say it's brutal technical death metal. This is just your no bullshit, no frills, no synths, anything. Just your straightforward brutal technical death metal that is crushingly heavy. And again, just that no bullshit. And these guys have been around for a long time now, and they're still writing excellent music. So this is out on Willowtip Records, right? Right? Yeah, Willowtip. And just, yeah. Again, they're legends in the scene. New York death metal done at its finest. So Malignancy with Discontinued. And man, that artwork. At number 13, again, another album that I simply was hooked on the moment I heard it. I love how different this is, and probably one that you're not as frequently, don't know too much, maybe a little bit more of the underrated album, I would say, and that is Noxus with Violence Inherent in the System. So yeah, Noxus is a band out of Ohio. This is their first full-length album. They've had an EP and a split come out previously that I was a big fan of, but they went farther than what they initially had wrote, and they progressed quite a bit in their songwriting. This is a very unique style of death metal where it has a straightforward, knuckle-dragging death metal styles, but they also incorporate other uniqueness in here, other instrumentation that you wouldn't expect, and I love that they added that to this. I've been hooked on this album ever since it came out. It is out on Rotted Life, and then it's also a split release with Dawn Breed Records. Very fun band. They write fun style of death metal. Like I said, it's a little bit more unique than what I'm used to listening to. Not your straightforward meat and potatoes death metal. And they just are simply awesome band. Great group of guys too. Gotta say that. So shout out to them. They actually did send me this vinyl, but I had bought the tape previously to that. So this came out June 28th. So if you're looking for a new death metal band to follow in the underground, that isn't just a copy paste of what you might expect in the death metal scene right now, that can be tend to be a little bit oversaturated, Noxus is definitely the perfect band for that. Awesome album. At number 12, again, this was tough. My top 10 really was tough. I took a while on this. I really kind of labored on it a little bit, but this one definitely is not for everyone, I will say that, and that is Ulcerate. Yep, it was going to be on here, Cutting the Throat of God. This is their 37th full-length album. Man, I didn't realize I had that many out. Your avant-garde, very dissonant and technical death metal. Very, very dissonant. I will admit, I was not a fan of this band until this album came out. In fact, I literally skated over this for a while because I didn't think that I was going to like it. The band is out of New Zealand, and this came out in June, so it's been out for quite a while. I started seeing high praise on it, and I finally decided to sit down and listen to it. And from the moment I heard that guitar tone and just those licks and the just really like dissonant, spacey vibe that I heard of those guitars, I was hooked right away. This can be a relatively hard album to digest, and I do realize it's not for everybody, especially if you're not into dissonant death metal. This is very dissonant. However, this is simply a phenomenal album. This is out on Debemur Morty Productions, and again, 57 minutes long. It is an exhausting listen. It definitely crushes your soul a little bit. However, something that I've truly enjoyed, and I am a fan of this band now. So Ulcerate, Cutting the Throat of God. Check it out if you haven't heard it. However, I think it's been on a lot of people's year-end lists already. Number 11. Man, what a phenomenal album. I'm just going to jump right to it. Cosmic Putrefaction with Emerald Fires Atop the Farewell Mountains. What an album name on Profound Lore. Now, man, the moment I heard this album, I knew, yep, this is going to be a top contender for me. This is going to be one that I listen to a lot, and that has simply been the case here for this. Cosmic Putrefaction, if you're not familiar, it's from Italy. This is a one-man death metal band who does phenomenal writing. Amazing guitar licks on here. The riffs are so good. It's got a very spacey vibe, as you can tell. Like, there's that spacier atmosphere on here. It is crushingly heavy and just so good. I love everything about this album. I even said, for me, it was hard to pick apart anything about it. And just to understand, with what limitations that he had for writing this, compared to, other people who are writing music this year, and just the sheer creativity and the thought process that went into this, you can tell. This was a labor of love. I absolutely am so hooked on this. Just simply phenomenal musician, Gabriel is. If you have not heard this, check it out. It is crushingly heavy, but there are so many moments on here that made me just go, wow. You really have to listen. There's a lot going on each song. There's so many elements added into this with just that heavy, crushing death metal on top of it. So this is phenomenally written, amazing album. I absolutely love it. So Cosmic Putrefaction, check them out. Or him, right? Them. He does everything, you know. So, awesome stuff. At number 10, another album that came out relatively soon. It wasn't, you know, when did this come out? Let's see here. I can't remember the exact date. September, so it's been out for a while. That's right, Ripped to Shreds with Sanchi on Relapse Records. Now, if you're familiar with Andrew Lee, you know he's had put out 3 other albums before this. The last one was Jubion. I can't say that. That was also on Relapse Records. He primarily was the only person on this band, but now he has a full head-on band on here. He's incorporated another singer as well, and this album is so fun. So good and so catchy. There are so many grindcore and gore grind elements added to this. Again, with that additional vocalist on here, it definitely makes it more fuller sounding. Michael Chavez is his name. Awesome album. I've been hooked on this ever since I got it. Been a frequent spin of mine. Just again, you have so many different elements of death metal. Andrew Lee is also a phenomenal guitarist. He writes amazing guitar solos, just a phenomenal guitarist, and that is a shining point on this. But again, that additional vocal style of here that feels more of like that gore grindcore sound is so much fun on here. So this has been one of the best albums of the year for me. I love this album so much, and that is why it is now in my top 10. So Ripped to Shreds, check it out if you haven't. Phenomenal artwork as well. Awesome stuff. Now we are at number 9. I keep pulling up all of my notes. I should have just had them up when I first started recording, but you know how this works here. We've got the U.S. band. I believe they're strictly out of Colorado for the most part. Black Curse with Burning and Celestial Poison. Now, I debated on putting this on my death metal video because it does have a lot of blackness to it, a lot of black metal style to it. But, yeah. Phenomenal, crushing, simply just head crushing, just aggressive, in your face, blackened death metal. A little bit of that bestial wave of this. But yeah, their second full-length album, and this is just, as soon as I heard it, it was incredible. It came out in October, and just I've been hooked on this ever since. If you're not familiar, there are members of Chemist and Primitive Man and Spectral Voice in this band, so it's a bit of a super group, and a lot of those Primitive Man style of Spectral Voice style of sounds are definitely a bit of a on here just a tiny bit, but man, this holds its own in regards to those other bands. This is just so crushing, so aggressive, so in your face, and I don't get tired of it whatsoever. I'm such a huge fan of this. So Black Curse, Burning and Celestial Poison. Check it out if you have not heard this. Alright, and at my number 8 spot, again, been hooked on this ever since it came out, Eternal with Cryptic Lust. Now, probably a band you're not too familiar with. This came out on Carbonized Records, but I believe it was pretty much self-released before that. And a band is out of Arizona. They're a fairly new underground band, and ever since I heard this album, I was simply hooked on it. This is just phenomenally written, straightforward death metal, very much in the vein of your Floridian death metal style. There's a lot of elements on here that sound similar to like Morbid Angel and those types of bands, and it's just done so well. If you're an old school death metal fanatic like I am, if you love those 90s death metal bands, and if you tend to get tired of the oversaturation of the old school death metal revival, I gotta say, at least check this band out and give them a chance, because they do this really, really well. It's just, it clicks the minute you hear it. It's so catchy, and just, it's not reinventing the wheel by any means, but it's definitely wearing their influences on their sleeve, and they're paying homage to those older death metal bands that we all love and adore. and they're doing it really, really well. So this is just simply phenomenal. And again, give this band a shot if you haven't. Awesome stuff, and I've been a huge fan ever since. I'm excited to see or hear what else they write in their career. So yeah, Eternal with Cryptic Lust. Number 7. This album. Ascites. I don't know how to say that name. I always say it wrong with Eden Through. Oh, what a journey this album is. And I debated on putting this on the death metal list because there's a lot of elements here that aren't just death metal, but I figured, you know what, there's enough death metal on here to put it on here. This is out on Total Dissonance Worship, awesome label. And ever since this came out back in May, I have been simply obsessed with this album. This is not your standard death metal album. There's a lot of... it's a very experimental death metal, as you could say. There's elements of hardcore, there's elements of grindcore, there's elements of prog, there's just death metal, and it's just mind-bending. It's got a lot of elements to it, but it's very abrasive and aggressive in your face at times, and then it has these more proggier, jazzy moments on here, especially on the B-side of this album, that really just, gave me chills when I heard it. I love this album, and I'm a huge fan of this band. I really enjoyed their last releases. False Peace, that came out in 2020, was one of my favorite releases to come out then. They've gone well beyond that. Their progression and writing is so different from there. They really experiment with a lot of different elements on this, and it just all worked really, really well and clicked with me right away. The harmonics and guitar tones on here are just so good. They're so spacey and dreamy at times, and like I said, it has more of that aggressive grindcore style of vocals throughout the whole entire album, and then there's those death metal moments. So again, it's a very unique listening experience, and just one that I've been hooked on ever since it came out. So Ascites, I don't know how to say it. The name will be up here. I'll edit it in. Awesome stuff. Check it out if you're looking for a more unique album, not your standard meat and potatoes death metal. You might enjoy it. At number 6, one that has been on this list ever since it came out, Sybaris with Maze Envy. Another $20 been released. Here we go. I know you guys are waiting for the other one. Maze Envy, it came out in March, and this is their second full-length album. The band is out of Los Angeles. Huge fan of this band. Been a huge fan of them for a long time. Back in my earlier videos, I showed off their demos, talked about how much I love them. This is a Death Doom band, and this album is phenomenal. It is crushing on side A and very sorrowful and sad and doomier on side B. There's just the violins on here and everything about it. Ever since I heard this album, I knew it was going to be one of my all-time favorites to come out this year, and that has not changed. This is phenomenal Death Doom, and they do it just perfectly, in my opinion. I cannot say anything bad about this album. I've tried to pick apart and be a little bit more nitpicky on it, and I just can't. It is so good. So if you're a fan of Death Doom, if you like the slower, death-crushing Death Doom, you will absolutely love this album. These guys are awesome. Sybaris. And man, I love their band logo. Maze Envy. Oh, so good. So good. Alright. We are officially to my top 5. And I will be 100% honest with you. My number 1 is my number 1. This is my number 1. But 2, 3, 4, 5 could have gone anyway. Any time my mood changes, they could go anyway. But my number 1 is my number 1. So I always like to say that. Number 5. Don't be surprised. Really don't be surprised. Blood Incantation with Absolute Elsewhere. So, I know. I've heard the criticism of the band. I know what people feel about this. I've had long, extensive talks about this album, more than any other album that have come out this year. And yes, it is Pink Floyd death metal. And a lot of people just do not care for that. They don't like it. They want their death metal to be their death metal. They want their Pink Floyd, their progginess to be their progginess. For me, though, I absolutely enjoyed this album. I loved it the moment I heard it, and I've loved it ever since. The reason why I did not put this at number one, because a lot of people would expect me to put it at number one, is that the luster did fade a little bit after this came out. I don't find myself listening to it as frequently as I did, and I don't feel like as hyped about it. When it first came out, there was a lot of hype. Actually, there's still quite a bit of hype. And I do believe it is very innovative. It is a very different style of death metal. I think they incorporated the prog into this perfectly, and I absolutely love it. I'm a huge prog rock fan, and I do listen to it quite a bit outside of death metal. And I have often said to myself, if I want to listen to 70s prog rock, I'll pull out my 70s prog rock albums and listen to them. But sometimes I get that itch where I really, really, really enjoy in death metal, and they nailed it here, in my opinion. I'm not a huge fan of their synth stuff, whatever ambient music that they put out previously, but it works well here. I enjoy it here, and I do think that this is a masterpiece in its own right. So there. Blood Incantation, Absolute Elsewhere. I don't really know what else to say. This album has been talked to death ever since it came out. The band is out of Colorado, and this is their third full-length album. They definitely have very transitioned their sound, but you saw it coming in the past releases that they had come out with. So, I mean, I wasn't surprised with how proggy they went on here. But yeah, I thoroughly think it is their best album that they've ever released. I do think that it's going to be one that is talked about for a long time, and I do think that the praise that it's getting is definitely warranted, and I do agree with a lot of that. However, like I said, it kind of lost its luster on me. Yes, I'll probably listen to it quite a bit. The listenability of it is there for me. However, the other albums I'm about to show, I definitely listen to way more since I've gotten this. So this came out back in October, and just it's been making waves in the scene. So yeah, it's on my list. I had to be honest. I had to put it on here. I wasn't going to keep it off here just because the mob mentality of people that don't like it and think that they're overhyped. That's not how I roll here. So Blood Incantation. This is out on Century Media. Number 4 was my number 1 for a long time until 2 albums came out previously to that. Another $20 been released. And the final one, so settle down. Slimeware with Chytridio mycosis relinquished. I'm not a doctor. I have no idea how to say that. I Googled it. I think I did it right. But yeah, this has been one of my all-time favorite albums this year. Ever since it came out back in March, I did a review for this in Heavy Metallurgy, and ever since then, I've been absolutely hooked on this. Slimeware is a band out of the UK. This is their first full-length album, but I've been a fan of them ever since they came out with their past EPs, The Delta Death Sirens, Mass Contamination, and Insurmountable Peril. I've loved them. I've thought they're one of the best underground death doom bands in the scene, and now they're on $20 Spin, and they're getting their praise, which is definitely deserved. This has got a little bit of a psychedelic element to it. There's definitely more of the dissonant style on here. It is very crushing at times, but also has different styles of elements on here that blend really well. There is a little bit of a slower death doom vibe, and there's also kind of a little bit of a hint of that blackened element, just a tiny bit to it. But again, I cannot say enough high praise of this. I've talked about this album so many times this year, and I've shared it so many times, and this has just stayed within my top 5 all year ever since it came out. So Slime Lord, awesome Brad Moore artwork, just incredible album. The re-listenability is there. I'm going to be listening to this for a long time, so check this out if you haven't yet. And my number 3, one that's been there since it came out, Brodequin, Harbinger of Woe. Yeah, some of you are like, damn, Melanie, that was your number 1 for a very long time. And that is true. But like I said, 2 other albums came out after this. And my mid-year all-time favorite albums that come out so far in 2024, this was definitely at least my number 1 death metal. Along with Slime Lord, they were pretty much tied. However, this album, oh man, this has not lost its lore for me at all this year. This is a band that has been out since the early 2000s. They released 3 albums and then went on a total hiatus and just went off the map after 2004. And they come back with this that is a brutal death metal masterpiece. And I've said for a very long time that nothing was going to ever top Devourment's Obscene Majesty in terms of my favorite brutal death metal band or album. This has done that. This is such an awesome listen. This is out on Season of Mist. This is their 4th full-length album. Like I said, their last full-length that came out back in 2004. I was such a huge fan of Instruments of Torture that came out, their first full-length. Credited as one of my all-time favorite death metal albums. Now this is out. This is on that list. Oh, just crushingly heavy, brutal death metal. If you're not a fan of brutal death metal, this definitely won't be for you. It's got those brutal death metal vocals, but the guitars and the drums and just everything on here are so well done. And it's got that darker sound to it of Torture and got these like choral, like chamber singer elements, like you're in a huge like Catholic church, and just there's so many things about this album that I absolutely love that have given me goosebumps while listening to it. So yeah, this album has stuck with me ever since it came out this year. It's been one that I've shared and talked about a lot. This came out back in March. Man, March was a really good year, or a good month. There's a lot of stuff that came out that I just realized. But yeah, just this album also came out during a time that I was pretty low in my life. Had a lot of really just horrible stuff going on, and we'll just put this on and escape into death metal land and just forget about all the bullshit. Just phenomenal release. So check this out if you haven't yet. Oh, it's so good. And at number 2, Defeated Sanity with Chronicles of Lunacy. Now, this album came out not that long ago. It came out in November 22nd, so it hasn't even been out a month yet. But I got this promo about a month before the album came out, and I knew from the very first listen that this was going to be one of my favorite releases, if not close to my favorite release. This is Technical Brutal Death Metal. The band is from Germany. I think they're very underrated in the scene. I think people often forget about them. This is their 7th full-length album. I think they have a perfectly flawless discography. I'm a huge fan of all of their albums, but this is by far the best thing, in my opinion, that they have put out so far. This is a very technical, brutal death metal album. It is not easy to digest if you're not into technical death metal, especially in the brutal death metal way, but there are things about this album that I just fell in love with. The guitars on here and just the overall riffs and the structures of the guitars written on here are captivating to me. They still have that jazzy element here that they do on their past releases. You can tell that definitely is an influence and it has not gone away. But man, this is crushingly heavy. It is so catchy for me, and I have not stopped listening to this. Just from the moment the first song comes on, Amputation String, I probably said that wrong. It just is relentless and crushing the whole entire time. And what I absolutely love about technical brutal death metal, I think it is done perfectly. This band can do no wrong in my opinion. And just, I don't know what to say. Check it out if you haven't heard it yet. Amazing stuff. And yes, I realize there are 2 Season of Mist releases in a row. I didn't even think about that. Whatever. Awesome band. Defeated Sanity. And finally, my number 1. This is probably going to be a shock to a lot of people that follow this channel. Nile. It had to be Nile. Come on. The Underworld Awaits Us All. Nile is one of my all-time favorite death metal bands, and I really am going to be honest with you, I had pretty low expectations for this album. I was not the biggest fan of What Should Not Be Unearthed, and I'm sorry, with Vile Neurotic Rites, Jesus, that is not true. One Should Not Be Unearthed is one of my favorite albums by them. Vile Neurotic Rites, that came out in 2019. I wasn't the biggest fan of that album. I didn't hate it, but it's definitely lower on my tier list of their discography. I had just a pre-assumption here, which is dumb, and I hate when people do this, but I fall victim to it a lot, that it was going to be much of the same for this album, and my God, was I wrong. These guys have been around since the late 90s, as you know. They put out some of the most iconic brutal technical death metal ever, and I did not think that they were ever going to write an album that topped some of my favorite albums in their discography, like Black Seeds of Vengeance, In Their Darkened Shrines, and Annihilation of the Wicked. However, here we are with this album, and it blew me away. I recorded a almost 3-hour long in-depth review of this album for Heavy Metallurgy that should be going up hopefully the same day as this goes up, or possibly within a couple of days, because I wanted to really talk in depth about this album. There are so many things about it that I did not expect. One, just the guitars are just so good on here. The production and the guitar tone and just the writing is so phenomenal. Everything about this album is just pure perfection, in my opinion. Karl Sanders is one of my all-time favorite death metal guitarists and vocalists, and just all around one of my favorite death metal guys in the scene. I've always not idolized him, but have considered, Nile and him just to be really like the top tier for me. And to come back in 2024 and put out, I think this is their 10th full length, and just wow me and add elements to it that they haven't done in their past albums, like and yes, it's got the Egyptian theme to it, but they do it a little bit different in this vein. There's a little bit more different of elements. The additions of the women's vocalists on this album are definitely the highlights of it, but just the vocals are so good. They have new members in the band I'm trying to think of their names now. We've got Zach Jeter, who does guitars and vocals on here. He is from Ulketh. If you've never heard that band, they're awesome. On Everlasting Spew. And then we've got George Callias is back, who is just the best part, in my opinion, of this album. George Callias is one of the best death metal drummers, just drummers as a whole in metal. And he's simply stunning on this album. Karl Sanders as well, with the guitars and the vocals. His vocals have not wavered. You don't hear any aging here, and it is just such a phenomenal album. If you are curious to know a more track by track, in-depth talk about this, that video will be up on Heavy Metallurgy. I will link it once I get it. Probably I'll just pin it in the comments. And definitely check that out. You'll hear more in-depth analysis of every single song on here, what we feel. We talk really further about it. But this has been my number one ever since it came out. I kind of played this off a little bit like I wasn't super hyped after I heard it. I was very hyped after I heard it. This came out in August, and like I said, I didn't have high hopes on it, so there wasn't much hype for me about it. In fact, I didn't even really talk about it that much with anybody. And then when I first heard it, I was so happy. I'm so happy. Nile's back. I love this band. I had to put it at my number one. It's by far been my most listened to album ever since it came out. And I spun it again right before I recorded this video. So this is my number one of 2024. Like I said, my list is going to be different than yours. I'm sure there's going to be something on here that I didn't put on my top 20, but I will have another video coming up of all of the 30 other albums that constitute my top 50 or my honorable mentions, I guess you could say, because there was a lot that came out this year, and there's a lot that I think deserve to be shouted out in the year end for people to know about, in case you've never heard of these bands. So that is all that I have today. Thank you guys for all the support this year. This has been simply incredible. One of my more successful years on YouTube. Keep in mind, I still have my year-end giveaway going on. I will be drawing the winner on December 27th, giving away several CDs and tapes, and I will link that in the description. And yeah, that's all that I have. Happy New Year, because once this is up, I'm not making any other videos until after that. I'm also going to put up my black metal, so you might see my black metal and my other year-end heavy metal lists but I wanted to get death metal up because everybody's been asking me about it. So thank you so much for all the support. Let me know in the comments what you think about my picks. Tell me your top 20. I love lists. I want to know what's out there because I'm sure I didn't listen to something this year, and this is my favorite time of the year. I love finding out what people loved, and I check out those bands, and I always do a follow-up in January of what I missed this year and what I've been checking out. So I will see you in the next one.